So thank you everyone for joining us today. So what we are going to be talking about today, and I hope you're all aware what we're going to talk about today, is how to get in shape for 2026 for your agency. Um, and the reason why we put this together is that we kind of wanted to come from two perspectives. So obviously, for those of you that know me, and I'll give a little introduction to me in a minute, I work with agencies. So I'm seeing what's happening on the ground at the moment with agencies. And then Carey, who's also going to be speaking today. You're Carey. We're now looking at your hands. There
Sorry,
he is.
I've got
Car-
I've got I've got some landlines in my office, and they have a habit of going off when you don't want them to go off.
Oh,
So I
always.
think got rid of it. Landlines, I remember them. Wow. Hmm.
Carey will introduce himself in a minute, but he's coming from the client's perspective. And you'll understand why. So it's really great to have the two of us come together to be able to give you both sides of the table because we all sometimes can sit there and look at it like, well, clients are this, and then it's like, well, the agency should do this. It's really important to look at both sides. And that's what we want to discuss today. What's happening on both sides? What are clients expecting? And what do agencies really need to do in response to that? So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jo Rogers. I run Client Success Matters. I've worked in agencies, or worked in marketing essentially for 20 odd years, mainly agency side. I have gone client side, which was really great for me to see the other side of the table as we're talking about today, to really understand what it is that the pressures and the challenges and why things take so long, client side, and give me that real empathy of what it's like to be on the other side of the table. And what I do in my business now is actually help agencies really look at how to service your clients to an excellent standard, looking at your client experience, making sure that we are elevating our client services teams to be that strategic partner that our clients are literally screaming out for. So I support agencies and everything to do with that. I'm going to pass over to Carey to give a nice overview of himself and what his business does.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm Kerry. You can say I'm a bloke. That's the first thing I need to say because often before people have met me, they don't know whether I'm going to be a bloke or a not a bloke or something in between. I don't know. But anyway, you can see that I am. I, like Joe, in fact, I am an ex-agency man myself and set up a company called Relationship Audits over 20 years ago now. What Relationship Audits does is it works with clients and agencies to assess the strength of the relationships that clients have with agencies and agencies have with clients. So we work for agencies, have done for a long time. We work for client companies. And in fact, we do what we do in terms of evaluating relationships, we do outside of marketing services as well. So we work in professional services, financial services, logistics, construction, wherever there's a high value relationship, then we're involved in that. And so we are talking to clients as part of what we do all the time. So what I'm going to try and do is give you a sense of, and much of this, by the way, you will probably know, but it's always nice to hear what you know confirmed by other people saying the same thing. So that's what I'm going to do today. Crispin.
Okay, I'm going to be firing the questions. I'm going to be channeling my inner Jeremy Paxman, although hopefully a more benign version of that.
Oh, no, you won't.
to, to get it's pantomime season. Oh, yes, he's behind you. I will be posing the questions. Talking of which, if any of you, which we hope you do, have questions, probably for ease of management. We'll save those to the end. There will be plenty of time at the end to take some questions. So please either pop your hand up at the end or pop them in the chat room. I'll be monitoring the chat room as we go along. If for any reason there are loads of questions and we're unable to answer all of them, Joe will follow up with kind of collective considered answers to those questions. Very briefly, my background, quite similar to Joe and Carey. I spent 20 years in the advertising agency business, primarily with Leo Burnett here and in Asia. And my last job was running the London office of a German advertising agency. Then, like Joe, I went client side. I was marketing director for one of my clients. Then for 12 years ran brand and innovation consultancies, and for the last 9 years have been running my own management consultancy alongside working in academia and doing executive coaching. Anyway, so that's me. Joe, Carey, ready to go?
Go for it.
Yep.
Go for it. Right. First question to Carey. So, you've got your finger on the pulse of the client side of things, particularly. You're speaking to them every day. What challenges would you say they're facing right now, and where do agencies really need to step up?
I think there's lots of things going on right now, but if I just summarize it in three, I think the first thing that, and we're all seeing this in everything we do right now, but the first thing is uncertainty. Uncertainty amongst the client community makes it more difficult for them to do things like confirm budgets, agree scheduling of work, and so on and so forth. So uncertainty is hanging over an awful lot of clients, as it is with agencies. Um, the second thing that's happening, so uncertainty is, if you like, is an overarching theme. The second thing is the desire, or is the requirement increasingly, to be able to demonstrate ROI for any activity that's being done. That keeps coming up all the time in terms of what clients are looking for from agencies uh, to identify what the expectations are, so that the agency knows what it's got to deliver. I'll come back to expectations a bit later on. And the third thing that is clearly evident is that the focus of client activity is very short term. Trying to get clients to commit long term to longer term activity is extremely difficult. So those are the three key things: uncertainty, the need for demonstrable return on investment of the funds, and a short term rather than a long term focus.
Thank you, Kerry. So, Joe, with those in mind, where do you think the gaps or blind spots of agencies are in terms of how they're partnering and servicing the clients today?
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you say that, Kerry, as well, because it was something that I was going to bring up. We are really in a
Mhm.
period where clients, there's a longer sales cycle, as you said, Kerry, there's economic uncertainty, and there's this nervousness as well about, onboarding a new client. So actually what we're finding is, rather than those big chunky projects that you used to get, your 100K projects, actually clients are now suddenly going in with well, we'll try you with a 15K, we'll try you with a smaller project first to see whether actually you are who I want to partner with. And I think with that comes the absolute need for retention and new business, and expansion of your existing clients needs to be the new growth strategy. It really needs to be the focus of you, because if you're not doing that, then you are reliant on trying to find the new business where there is uncertainty, where there is less work, where there is smaller budgets, where there is a longer period for you to build that trust with your clients. So retention and expansion of your existing clients is absolutely fundamental. And one of the biggest things that are happening at the moment, which I'm seeing in a lot of agencies, is there's an over focus on delivery. Everyone is feeling the pressure of, smaller budgets and clients expecting more. So everyone's sort of doubling down on delivery. And actually what's ending up happening is you're not doubling down on experience. And when you don't double down on the experience, then what you're going to do is you're going to become like everybody else. You are going to become like your competitor knocking at the door and then offering it for a little bit cheaper, and them going, well, they deliver what they say they're going to deliver, but let's try this other agency because they're going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver, but they're going to deliver it cheaper. Whereas if this agency over here is giving me an exceptional service at the same time, is adding value, and this is a really important thing to note here, because everyone talks about, over servicing. Over servicing is not a problem. Over delivering is a problem. Okay, so you've really got to understand the differentiation between there, because over delivering means that you've got a scope problem. Over servicing is meaning that you're going above and beyond for your client, and you're giving them the experience that they need to be having. And there are far too many agencies playing in the vendor space. They really, really need to move to that partnership model, and a true partnership model. And I'll get onto that in a little bit later. And it was really interesting. Carrie talks about ROI, and I really think this is a really big one. There are just too few of you asking what are the proper business success metrics up front. Because you can't show value if you don't know what success looks like for your clients. And goes beyond KPIs. Again, I think of all of these things as base level. You're delivering base level. You know their KPIs, base level. But what does business success look like for them? And what does it look like, success look like for the individual as well? Because that's really important, because they will probably be two very different things. And the more that you can tie to those success metrics, the more that your clients will see the value that you're bringing. If you're just talking about vanity metrics, it is not going to get you where you need to go to. You are not going to differentiate yourself from other agencies. And, big one for me is the account teams. They are not strategic enough. They do not have the capability to have the conversations that your clients need them to have. They want to feel challenged. They want the expertise. They are coming to you for that. Otherwise, they would just hire someone in-house. They come to you for your expertise. What are you seeing in the market? Challenging the brief, coming up with new ideas, being proactive. You've got to move your account management team, your client services team, however you frame it, away from being just delivery to strategic advisors. And that's a hierarchical thing as well. It's not every single person needs to be having that conversation, but you need to be enabling your team to be able to do that. And one final one for me is far too much over-reliance on one stakeholder. Far too many people have a great advocate within their business, and they're like, this is great. We get on with them really well. We love them. They're great. Great. When they leave, what happens then? You have to build, even if that isn't a growth account, even if it isn't that there are different business units or regions or anything like that to expand to, you need to make sure that to have a solid, retainable client, you need to have a much more expansive sphere of influence. You need to be thinking about the blockers. You need to be thinking about the influencers. You need to think about the decision makers. The more people that know and understand you and the value that you're bringing, when change happens, you will not necessarily just be out the door. Mine was not quick and simple, sorry.
So picking up on, and I know Joe and Kerry, we were going to move very swiftly, inevitably into the realms of AI, because you can't have a conversation these days without considering it. But as you were talking, firstly, a concept which I remember from my days in ad agency, we always talked about the single point of failure. And in an account, what is that single point of failure? And you actually might have multiple single points of failure.
Yep.
So just a concept to consider for everybody. And the other thing that...
Hello. Sorry, I'm in a webinar, then I...
Oh, somebody.
That's right.
Yeah. And the other thing that we talked about in the lead up to today was this idea of, and I'm sure everybody on the call does this, but the question is to your teams, is the first question they ask when they meet the client daily, weekly, or whatever, how's business? And exactly what you were saying, Joe, actually really getting under the skin and being a business partner, not a delivery partner. Nonetheless, moving on to the inevitable beast of AI.
Just say one thing?
Yeah, please, Gary.
Which is building on what Joe said. One of the things that is when we talk to clients, one of the things that they say discriminates one agency from another is the agency's ability to add value that they can't get elsewhere. Now, the simplest way that you can do this, and it is very simple, is from time to time, leverage your learning from one client and share it with another client, right? So every client in every industry that we do what we do says to me the same thing. It would be great if this provider, this agency, this whomever they are, were able to tell me what they are learning from working with other clients that I could myself benefit from. If you have a deck of case studies that you can just, you can take from one client to another, it's an added value thing. If it gives them a shortcut to a new way of doing something, and that raises their own profile within their organization, you will be their friend for life. I tell
Yeah,
every agency to do this, and so many agencies go, yeah, 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 and then don't do it. It's an easy win.
interesting point, Kerry. And again, a reflective question for the group dialing in today is how often do you actually get your clients collectively together over dinner, lunch and learns, or breakfast, or whatever it is, so that not only exactly as you say, Kerry, they've got the opportunity to share, but they start to feel a sense of community, that the agency is the one facilitating that community.
Yeah.
And therefore it adds to what, again, another concept, the cost of disinvestment. If I break if I, the client, break the relationship with the agency, what is it actually costing my business? And the more that agencies, I think, can think about the cost of disinvestment to their client from breaking the relationship, then hopefully that will help. So moving on to AI, and Carey, again, what are clients telling you about AI? How they're
What
using
am I
it?
saying?
How do they feel about
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I mean, look, AI is around us all, right? Clients expect agencies to be using AI. They will be using AI themselves. I think that having said that, all the clients that I talk to say, yeah, but the agency shouldn't just try and apply AI throughout every single thing they do, right? It is not a blanket application. Um, the clients seem to, and the clients want different things. So I was talking to a drinks company in the summer, a very well-known drinks company, who said that they did not want their agency and they would not run creative work created purely by AI. Right, so the use of AI to create things that went out with their name on it was not something they would buy. However, they did want their agency to use AI, in his words, or the guy I spoke to, as a thought partner. How can you use AI to give a strategic, to go into the numbers that you may have on the client's business and take another look at it from a fresh perspective? How can you use AI to do that? And how can you use AI to streamline your processes? So, it's not a blanket application. Different clients want different things, but, streamlining process, making it easier internally to get to the output delivery and therefore a positive outcome is certainly something. And we'll come back to value for money shortly in terms of, whether people think that AI means you should do everything cheaper. There's a bit different perspectives on that, but frankly, yeah, they're expecting the agencies to use it. You need to merchandise how you're using it, and you need to be clear when you are using it to do it for them.
And I like your distinction between, well, the idea that AI should be a thought partner, because I think that builds on what Joe was saying about the distinction between delivery and strategy and
Yeah,
added value.
yeah.
So to that point, Joe, what practical steps do you think agencies can take to integrate AI without undermining this trust or value in the relationship?
Mm. Yeah, and it's a really good question, and I'm going to come back to it. But I wanted to just read you out some stats. I received an email this morning, which was very timely, where someone had done a survey on 100 agencies on their adoption of AI, and I thought it was really interesting. So I'm just going to read you out some of the stats from this, just so in case you haven't had it. So so they've said AI maturity is still low to mid. So there's 28% AI newbies. 49% are still cautious and explorers, and only 23% of agencies out of those surveys are using AI in a strategic, structured way. The usage is widespread, but it's shallow. So 57% have used AI for over 12 months. ChatGPT dominates, 29%. And the top uses for it is content ideas, competitor research, and strategy. But the biggest area, and I'm going to touch on this, is process and structure are the biggest weaknesses. So 43% have no SOPs in place, 39% keep prompts in their head, 66% only somewhat trust the accuracy, 60% only somewhat fact check, and 34% don't track time saved. So from my perspective, and I don't know I personally found that really interesting. And obviously it's only 100 agencies, but it gives you a good idea of kind of the state of where we're in. I think everyone's using it to a certain degree, but no one really knows how to use it and how to be efficient with it. And I think, I was at the Pimento New Business Festival the other month, and it was all about AI, and everyone was focusing on, and it's the most important thing, is the human. Humans are there to interpret what comes out of AI. And one of the things that I've seen, which is really, really worrying from a client servicing perspective, is that actually what's happening is there's twofold. And I'm sure that you will all appreciate this and understand this. When I use AI, I have 20 years of experience. So when AI outputs something, one, my input is based on 20 years of knowledge. And my output, I have 20 years of knowledge to be able to check it and see whether I think it's right or not. When you have got teams which don't have experience, then one, the input is probably going to be poor and the output is not going to be able to check well. So that's one challenge you've got to think about. The second challenge, which I'm seeing a lot of, is teams are using the AI so much that they know their knowledge is going down. So they're like, I love every person that ever has a call with me, I have Fathom. I have Fathom so that I can have personal interactions and not get distracted by notes. But I'm still engaged. I'm still listening. It's still going into my brain. There are far too many people that rely on a note taker to take those notes. And I've seen it in an agency that I'm working with at the moment. What they're doing is they're going onto note taker, taking off the notes, pinging it over to the client. And actually in their brain, they're forgetting about what the actions are because the note taker has written it for them and then don't actually think about what's the next steps. And then when they're doing research, it's doing research, popping it out. Oh, here's some information about the client, not reading it. I'm just sending it over. So when you ask the client services person what's going on inside their account at the moment, what's going on in the industry, what's happening in the account, they have no idea. And their knowledge is actually going down because they're so reliant on what's happening. So for me, the fundamental piece that agencies need to have, and obviously there's a compliance thing that needs to come to it, so legally, but there's also where's your boundaries around this? How do people internally use it? And everyone needs to use it in the same way as well. You can't have some using it, some not using it, some completely bastardizing it, and all of that sort of stuff. It has to be controlled and it has to be maintained because it can actually do more harm than good in the long run. And particularly in an environment of remote working, no learning by osmosis, we are going to get to a point where our teams are monkeys on a computer and not thinkers. And how are they then going to be able to have those conversations with the clients, which is what they're trying to get and what they want from you guys? You've got to be really careful. It's got to be seen as an enabler. And my last point that I just wanted to make goes back to Kerry's point, which was about, and I surveyed my community on this, of client services directors, because I was really interested on this. How many people actually ask their clients what their AI policy is? Because I bet you anything, most agencies don't ask that. And going back to your point, Kerry, some clients don't want you to use it. Some clients do want you to use it. Some clients want you to use it in certain ways. It's really important that you establish that early on. How does your client want you to use AI and what are they comfortable with? Because if you don't know that, then you could end up getting yourself into a whole world of trouble down the line. And that's never going to be a great place to be.
Yeah, it reminds me a few weeks ago, people have obviously probably seen this report about Deloitte in Australia having to refund part of the Australian government 400,000 Aussie dollars or something like that because they issued a report that had hallucinations in it because human had not checked the output. And it plays to, I think, two factors that are additionally important: critical analysis and curiosity, and how agencies are training. I mean, one hopes that universities, schools are training that as well, but I think it's incumbent on employers to think about investing in helping people with this curiosity and critical analysis to avoid the juniorization that we hear about. Which leads neatly on to thinking about value. For you, Carey, pricing always comes up. What are you hearing about value for money and how that's affecting client agency relationships?
Well, first, value for money is not a new. It's not a new thing. It just doesn't go hand in glove with AI. I think that there is a conception or perception that AI can help improve cost efficiency of agencies and therefore make their product cheaper. And there is a temptation to do that amongst certain clients, thinking that agencies can, reduce their man hours by using AI. And I think that the counter to that is that the goal really is to focus on the whole phrase is value for money. And what is value for money? It's what you get out for what you pay. And critically, what we find is that the value for money equation goes up in the agency's favor when the agency is able to be seen to go back to what we talked about slightly earlier on about adding value. Now, if you don't know what value you need to add, try asking your client what they see as added value from their agency. The leveraging learning point I talked about a few minutes ago, that is absolutely on everybody's list. But there are other things, and let me give you one story about this. We were doing some work for a company that was acquiring in the construction industry, and believe me, it's still relevant to the agency world. And I spoke to this particular individual who was using this company that was looking to be acquired by another one. And I said to him, what is it that that these guys do for you that you like? What do they do? And he always said, well, they add value. And I said, how do they add value? In what way? And he said, oh, gossip. And you went, well, gossip? And the point was that this particular consultancy was a planning consultancy, so they were very close to the local authorities' planning committees, and the developers clearly wanted to know what was the kind of mindset within the organization, the local council, in order to be able to kind of decide whether they were going to develop a particular location or site or whatever it was. So, added value varies between individuals, and not everybody's added value is the same as everybody's else. So if you can find out what your client sees as added value, that improves the value for money equation. In other words, makes you seem better value all the way around.
We're talking semantics, and I don't mean semantics it's semantic. I mean literally the power of words, value of words. And one of the things leading on to pose a question to you, Joe, I'm intrigued about is when I see agencies use terms like cost, budget, fee instead of investment. So in a pitch context, you get to that final slide of here's the cost or here's the budget. Maybe the semantic is, well, here's the investment that you're going to be making. So leading on from that, Joe, how can agencies rethink their pricing and servicing models, their commercial model, so that they're moving out of this spiral of selling hours and selling value?
Yeah. I like that. I actually use your investment when I create proposals, but I think it's a really good one. We've got to basically and it's interesting. I've seen this change over the years. When I first started out, everything was project based, and we sort of moved into retainer based, which I can totally understand from an agency's point of view, where you like a retainer. You've got that stable revenue stream, what's coming. But the problem that happens with retainers time and time again is that you never get your scope right. You're typically working on an hour basis. How many hours are within my retainer? And then the client starts talking to you in terms of hours. How many hours have I got left? How many hours is it taking to do this? How many hours? It's self-perpetuating. So your client's mindset then is in hours. So you're then ultimately selling in hours. It also becomes very difficult to upsell to clients when you're on retainers. So what ends up happening is that you just over deliver because you think you're doing the right thing, because clients just ask, you squeeze it, and probably your scope isn't strong enough. If I'm going to be honest, your scope has probably got way too fluid, not enough boundaries in it, not enough ability to be able to ask for more budget. So although retainers feel good, they feel like it's the right thing because it's stability. I can see long-term budget, revenue. It makes me feel more comfortable. Actually, project-based is actually much easier to talk from a value perspective, and it's much easier to upsell. So what you move away from is this takes so many hours, or we've spent so many hours, to this is the piece of work that we have completed. And this is what's included in the piece of work that's completed. So I think that agencies really do need to try and move away from that and think about what their business can sustain. So maybe your percentage of retained work drops and you get more project-based work. But a lot of it, as Crispin, you mentioned, is about how you talk about it. You got to move away from talking about hours. You need to move away from that type of budget and cost and talk way more about outcome-led. What will this work achieve? Because if you, and then you go back to that point that I made at the beginning about success metrics, really understanding what the success means to them, and you link everything to outcome, then you're moving yourself away from hours.
Can I add a sort of additional thought question perspective, which is more for maybe anybody on the call who might be thinking long term about their exit strategy? And when I've been involved in buying and selling businesses, retainer is actually one of, let's say, 20 things that might be on an acquirer's list, which is actually they would pay an additional percentage on the price for the agency, the more contracts and the more retainers that are in place, because it gives visibility of future income. So, and before you answer that, Joe, I'll give you perspective. It reminded me also when I worked at Leo Burnett, I'll keep the client's name confidential, but it was a global client, and the UK CMO, they had right of audit of the agency's books on their business, not the overall agency. But the client said, I always want to be in the top 3 most profitable clients to the agency. Why? Because he knew he was going to get the best attention if his relationship with the agency was right at the top of the profit list, which I thought was maybe counterintuitive to a lot of the views that clients might have these days. But boy, oh boy, did it focus the agency's attention. So this idea of, sorry, Joe, going back to, yes, I get the argument around project-based. But if you are looking longer term to sell your business, my experience is retainer and contracts can actually add value to the sale price of the agency.
Yeah. And that's, and it's a really, really fair point. I think when we're looking at project base, I would always, all of your clients, you should be doing this. Obviously, you can't do this with all your clients, but being involved in planning and that planning stage, so what the forecast for the year is going to be, will give you the retained view of how much they're going to spend with you for the year, but you have ability to be able to talk about it from a value pace, probably not over service as well, and still have the ability to go, I know that with this client, it was always going to be 100 grand, whether it was retained or project, but you're going to have way more control over those budgets when you're not thinking about it from I'm talking more from an hourly basis. You've got to move away from hourly. If you're going to do, and I say this to my clients as well, if you're going to be on retained work, think about how you scope your work. Don't scope your work 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Scope how you need to work. If you need to go through discovery, you scope for discovery. If discovery is then going to help you to find what's going to happen in the next quarter, then you rescope at that point. You can put ballpark since the clients have an idea of what it's going to be. But if you want to be accurate and you want to be able to stop completely over servicing in that respect, you've got to give yourselves the chance to scope appropriately for those pieces of work.
So this suggests, thus it ever was, trust, transparency, openness, proximity, really good, strong relationships are vital to have that honest dialogue. So Kerry, but kind of building on that, what do you see is at the heart of really strong agency client relationships?
A few things really. The first thing is, and let me ask a question to everybody here. When was the last time you asked your client what their expectations were of you? Have you ever done it?
Is that a rhetorical question?
No, I mean, it's a proper question. I mean, has anybody ever done that? Okay. So that's when we do what we do, one of the first questions we ask is, what are your expectations of the agency? And we have a supplementary rider question that says, and by the way, have they ever asked you what your expectations of them are? Now, if you haven't, I would encourage you to do so, for the simple reason that if you know what they're expecting from you, you have a better chance of delivering against that and of exceeding their expectations. And that's the way, once you're exceeding expectations, this whole value for money thing goes out the window. They don't want to, if you are giving them more, meeting and beating their expectations. So the first thing is, if you don't ask your clients what their expectations of you are, please do. Okay. Sorry. Secondly, make sure that you listen and demonstrate that you have heard. It's very easy in lots of conversations. So you play back what you've heard to the client so that they're both on the same page. Sometimes some people hear and they don't listen, or they don't listen and they hear but they don't listen. And the third thing I would say is think about flexibility. Increasingly, people are saying to me, when I ask them, what are your expectations of the agency? The number of times clients say, I need them to be flexible and adaptable to circumstances and be anticipatory as much as they can. Because, the one thing that we know at the moment is that things are not straightforward as maybe they used to be, and there's always some kind of change on the horizon. So having a flexible and adaptable outlook and kind of state of mind is very important as far as because what the clients don't want is a battle. They don't want stubbornness, right? Now you can make your point, but if you've got an open perspective on what you will do and how you will do it, and you keep your client informed before they chase you, it's much easier to be on the front foot. So those are my three. Ask for expectations, be flexible, and make sure they are clear that you've heard what they need.
Kind of take from all of that you've got their backs.
Yeah.
So Joe, your perspective, you talked earlier about thinking less of delivery and more about strategic partners and value. What practical suggestions might you have or insights for elevating client servicing so they do become strategic partners rather than just delivery doers?
Yeah, and we touched on some of them already, but one, really important to know the business, not just the marketing plan or the project that you're working on, but what's going on in the business. And thinking about how you can change those meetings that you have with your clients, which do typically, particularly the status meetings, the weekly status meetings, how do you bring value into those conversations? How do you use them to actually get more strategic insights? So just very simply asking them for business updates. What's going on inside the business at the moment? What's important for us to know? What's the stuff that's going on that actually might down the line actually, might have an impact, change of leadership or anything like that. That all of that sort of stuff, redundancies, anything like that can actually have an impact on the work that you're doing or actually be able to support them. But making sure that those conversations do not just rely on just talking about delivery, that actually that you're seeing that you're either bringing insights, competitor insights, market insights, audience behavior into those conversations. And one thing which I hear from agencies and particularly client services quite a lot is that they go, but surely they know this stuff. Like, why would I tell them what's going on with their competitors? Or surely they know what's going on inside their industry. They don't have time. I can guarantee you that they probably have a newsletter that has come through from their company. They haven't read it. Mass majority of the time, they really don't know what's going on. And if they do, they're not going to see it negatively. They're just going to see it like, okay, cool, you know what's going on inside the industry at the moment. But that's the added value that, Kerry was talking about earlier. What are the things that you can do to bring to the table that show that you know what's going on? As Kerry said, what's going on with your clients that you're doing at the moment. What projects have you done with them recently that's worked really well? What particular tactic have you done that's, that is, to me, is one of the easiest ways of an upsell.
Yeah.
What's worked really well with another client, which I think would work really well for you. They don't have
Yeah.
to be in the same industry.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
if you see that it's worked really well, or a particular way that you've talked about something, or a technology you've used or something, stuff like that, people love to know what others are doing, and then they're way more likely to go, actually, let's give that a go because that sounds cool and it worked for them, so let's give it a go. Obviously, if it fits within your strategy and their business objectives. I mentioned it before, but building relationships across the organization, absolutely critical, and making sure that you're challenging with confidence. And the only way that everything that I'm talking about here is going to happen is if you enable, train, and give the insights to the teams to be able to do this, because confidence comes from knowledge. And if they don't have knowledge, they are not going to confidently be able to challenge, to bring those strategic ideas, to ask the relevant questions, to be able to unearth those opportunities. And you've got to realize that we are no longer in the world of, we all go along to meetings together, and we have face-to-face client meetings, and we're in the office together and we're learning off each other. That was great. But we're not in that world anymore. So it's so much harder to learn and absorb other information from other people. We've got to give our teams the ability to be able to do that. We can't just expect them to know how to do that with no support.
One of the things that, again, we talked about before the call in the run up to it was a question to everybody, I suppose, to reflect on. How often do they spend time in their client's business? And just to give a quick example, when I was an account manager, joined the McDonald's business at Leo Burnett, we had to work in McDonald's. And I remember I did sweeping duty at the West Bromwich McDonald's. I worked in actually getting in their business and really under the skin of it. I'm conscious, a question for Joe. It's 10:15. I was going to sort of ask both of you about forecasts, looking in that crystal ball for 2026. We've also got 2 or 3 questions that have come in the chat room. So, Joe, how are we doing for time?
Well, we are at time. So my suggestion would be is if anyone needs to drop off, feel free to drop off. We'll keep on recording and you can watch the last 15 minutes. If everyone's happy, we can keep on going. It's okay, Charles, don't worry. We'll send the recording afterwards. So anyone that does need to drop, we don't think you're being rude, but we will continue, get these last bits done and open up for questions as well.
Thank you. Great. I mean, I'm sure we could carry on for hours.
I'm sure we could.
Just to, so looking ahead, if agencies remember one thing going into 2026, Kerry, what should it be?
I'm sorry, but I'm going to give buy one, get one free, right? First thing is remember how much. I know you think about your client's business lots of the hours in the day. Remember that what the client does with you guys is a very, very small part of their day. And that's always astonishes me when clients tell me, how much time they actually spend, less than 10% of their working day spent thinking about the things the agencies think about. So, think about that. And the second thing, I could just go back to this whole thing is, if you don't know what your client's expectations are of you, you can't beat them. If you can beat them, that opens all kinds of other doors, more business, great value perception, higher propensity to recommend, blah, 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 blah. So remember that you're a small part of their day and make sure you understand what their expectations are.
Thank you, Kerry. Wise advice. Joe?
I'm going to be annoying and actually give you 3, but I'll try and do them quickly. So review your current client experience. So think about every stage of that life cycle. So even from right at the beginning of your front of house, does that align to actually what you do? And then think about your onboarding process. Is it value driven? Is it actually, are you showing value early on before you've even got anything into market? Provide clarity, set those expectations. Are you linking everything back to that business success metrics that we talked about at the beginning? Are you providing those clients insights, challenging, offering strategic guidance? What about surprise and delight moments? We didn't talk about that, but what about surprise and delight moments? And then also, what's your offboarding process like? Super important as your onboarding process. And what about re-engaging with lapsed clients? So really important to think about that full client experience, because as I said at the very beginning, retention and growth of your existing clients should be your main growth strategy for 2026. And ultimately train your team. It's so important. Think about, training from lots of different areas. So, get them to go to conferences, listen to webinars, listen to podcasts, give them the time for professional development, use external trainers, but also you have so much knowledge in your agency. Use internal training. It's so important. I can't tell you how many people, client services people that I talk to that don't really understand the services that their agency provide, which is madness, because how on earth is your client services team ever going to be able to identify opportunities or upsell or have a strategic conversation with their clients if they don't even know the basics of what you guys do? But I really, really believe that client services teams should be marketeers. They have a holistic view on marketing. How does your program fit within the marketing strategy that client is running? And then finally, just really thinking about your AI strategy. How is it used internally? How do you not let your team become over-reliant on it, but actually using it to enable them to have more time to focus on what we've just been talking about? And then obviously making sure you ask your clients what their strategy is as well. So that's my 3.
Thank you. So first question from the floor, from Debbie. What advice do either of you have to expand advocacy and within the stakeholder group inside a client?
Yeah, so I've got a couple on this as well. So obviously referrals is the most basic one. You can ask, do the legwork for your clients as well. Don't just sit there and say, is there anyone within the agency that you could refer me to, a client that you could refer me to? You want to be identifying the person. You want to be providing, he might be providing the material to send, here's my creds deck, would you mind doing it, etc. This is the reason why. But think more strategically about it as well. So you're going in to see your client for a meeting. Ask your client, is there anyone whilst I'm here in the office that you think would be worthwhile me meeting? Really easy one. Clients will always sit there and be like, do you know what? Actually, there's a meeting going on, blah, blah, blah. And such is usually in the office on a Tuesday. Blah, blah, blah. Why don't you meet up with these people? Really easy. It was one of the easiest ways that I grew Oracle when I was working on it, was literally getting into the office and asking people, who should I see? FaceTime with clients is one of the fundamental easiest ways of expanding that. If you're going abroad and meeting clients, same thing. Using your clients as the advocacy is hugely helpful to expanding that sphere of influence. Obviously, you've now got LinkedIn, which can support you linking in with them. Just being really mindful about why you're outreaching to people as well. Don't just go in with generic messaging. Be really mindful about and be really strategic about your approach. How am I doing this? Why am I outreaching to them? So if you're thinking about it from rather than a growth perspective, but like an individual stakeholder perspective, and expanding out to cement your relationship in that particular business unit, for example, think about quarterly business reviews. Who should be in that quarterly business review? You want to have the senior people within that. Think about your sales process. In that sales process, your sales team, whoever's had that conversation, might be the founder, whoever, has probably been speaking to quite a lot of people in that sales process. Who's nurturing those relationships post win? Loads of people forget about that. They think about, oh, well, I'm now been passed on to the marketing manager and I'm working with the marketing manager. But what about all the 5, 6 other people that whoever your founder or your sales team has been speaking to, who's continuing nurturing those relationships, because they will be really important to bring into those situations as well.
It's almost like the agency leaders on the call today would say to their teams, right, I don't want to see you in the office one day a week. I want to see you walking the corridors of the client and being in their faces. Carey?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, I think the other thing is that if you deal, um, getting a referral internally is terrific, and that's, as Joe said, what you need to be going. And the way you do that is by adding value, blah blah blah, right? But there's another thing here, which is if you have to deal with procurement, don't make an enemy of the procurement person. Treat them. I know this is difficult, but treat them as human beings. Make a friend of them. Offer to show them something, to share something with them that they might be able to share internally, right? Because if you get somebody, a procurement person who's on your side, it's a lot easier to get more referrals. I remember when we used to work, we did a lot of work for Nokia, and we started working with their comms agencies. And we made a friend of the procurement people at Nokia. And before we knew where we were then also working with the professional services people, with the facilities management people, with the um, uh, personnel departments,
Yeah.
So our lever into the organization was through the procurement people because we'd made a friend of them. So don't don't see procurement people as ogres. They can make your life a lot easier and get you business.
It's a really good point. Sorry, Crispin, I was just going to say, I actually interviewed a ex-procurement person, and he was saying to me that for procurement to move away from looking at everything from a line item perspective is to move into value, show the value that you're bringing to the agency. And they were like, why are we kept away from drinks? You invite, your marketing manager and the head of marketing out for drinks, but why am I not invited out for drinks? You've got to, and procurement's one, but there's loads of other blockers that you can find, particularly in large corporations. You want to nurture them probably more than you want to nurture your actual clients. So don't forget that when you are thinking of doing hospitality things, or just sending a note of thanks or a Christmas card or whatever you're going to do, don't forget procurement, don't forget compliance, don't forget, internal creative people, things like that. It's really important to think about the full mix as well of who not just your influencers and decision makers.
I appreciate, Debbie, you had another question as well, which was around the mix between retainer and project based, and whether anybody's had experience. Mindful of the time and the fact that Sarah has also had a question, I'd like to suggest, Joe and Carey, that we answer Debbie's other question in a follow-up. But Sarah's question was to Carey's point around client uncertainty. Are you hearing this from an individual level, i.e. their own role, their own career, or at a business level, i.e. the brand? Carey?
It's primarily at a business level.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, there is just, we're all aware of it. We're all aware of what's going on, in with Ukraine, with tariffs and all that kind of stuff. A lot of uncertainty. I was watching yesterday, looking at the gathering of the CBI in Westminster Hall, and the uncertainty associated with today's budget, for example, is just one manifestation of that. There is an awful lot of uncertainty, and what uncertainty does is it acts as glue. People can't walk. It's very difficult to walk through glue if you try. And that's what uncertainty is doing. So people are just not taking decisions. They're pushing off decisions. We're finding a lot of this. People just pushing away a decision about doing things. They're not, going one way or t'other. They're not actually saying we're not going to do it. They're just putting off the decision. So, yeah, it's at a business level, definitely.
Hopefully Rachel in accounts will help us out today. Final word to you, Joe, in answer to that question, and then I'll pass over to you to wrap up, because I think, if I'm right, the timing's about there.
Yeah, well, we've gone over already, so thanks everyone. No, I would agree with Carey on that. I think, from our clients are driven by what happens in the business. you know, the budgets are driven by what happens in the business. So obviously there is huge uncertainty at the moment, and they are going to, and they know, and I know this, they are being squeezed and they are being made, to the point that Kerry made at the beginning, to prove every penny that they're spending. And it was interesting, actually. I was talking to some clients, SEO in particular, and they were really struggling with being able to basically prove why they should have more budget, or not even just more budget to continue the activity that they were doing. So there's certain activities as well that you do which are really hard to prove, particularly when you're looking at metrics to prove value on. So your best thing that you can possibly do is to help your clients articulate it back up the business.
Yes.
So they will always have to articulate back up the business. So what can you do to support your clients? And don't overcomplicate things as well. You've got to think about who it is that they're going to be talking to. They may not understand the technical stuff. You've got to distill it down into business language. What are you doing and how is it proving value? And again, going back to that point about business success and everything, it's really important to help them through uncertainty, because as we all know, uncertainty, and when they cut costs, marketing, and it always is the area that it happens. And so, yes, I like 99.9% agree with Kerry. I think there's always that 0.1 bit where everyone is still worried about their jobs.
So on an optimistic note, helping client, I take from that, Joe, helping clients create or increase some level of certainty, being the ones that at least provide an element of additional certainty by covering their backs, and also maybe having binoculars looking out to the future on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, do you want to close the session?
Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone. And I mean, I also thank you so much, Kerry and Crispin, as well, for your time, for coming on to this webinar and giving us your expertise and opinions as well. So thank you, everyone, for coming. As always, I hope it was useful. We really wanted to make sure that we give you two sides of the coin, and hopefully get you guys set up well for the future. And if you need any support and anything that we've talked about, obviously I'll send an email, post this, I'll send the recording as well, post this as well for everyone. But please do drop myself, Kerry, or Crispin a note, and we'd be more than happy to support in any challenges that you're facing or into 2026. But we wish you all the best for 2026 as well.
Thank you. That was brilliant. Thanks.
No worries. Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.